Hello, welcome to the Christchurch Fox Chapel podcast. The most utterly disgusting podcast in the entire Fox Chapel area.
Anglican! Sorry, just got to get that out.
A few moments ago, we came into the studio to find that someone had left for us a packet of chocolate-coated crickets. And in a moment of madness, we each ate a piece. I had a very, very small amount of what Ben describes as thorax.
Yeah, it was a thorax.
And you had a substantial...
I had a whole cricket.
A whole cricket? Did you really?
Yeah, I broke a whole one off and
How was it for you?
Initially pleasant, followed by an ever-growing wave of disgustingness.
In a sense, the opposite of a lament.
Yes, an inverse lament. This is what happens when you don't lament.
Yeah.
Initially, is that at first you feel like you're okay, and then gradually the dysfunction grows and grows and grows because you're like a whitewashed tomb. You're like a person who just ate a chocolate-covered cricket who's denying how bad it really is.
It was really, truly unspeakably rotten. It really was. I have a seltzer in front of me. I've gone for a cranberry lime seltzer.
I'm jonesing for a decaf coffee.
Anything.
Yeah, it was really gross. You can find that encounter on our bonus episode. There's a special appearance by my wife, Jenna, and my son, Asa, who are our callers. They called in and witnessed the whole thing via audio. But that's not primarily what we're here to do.
We're actually here to talk about the book of Joel. And that momentary distraction, I think, has passed.
Yeah, and if you're joining in the book, Joel speaks and writes in the wake of a catastrophe in Israel, and where there were locusts that decimated everything. And we've discovered in this study that a locust is really just kind of it's a grasshopper, or I think a cricket might be different actually than a grasshopper.
Oh, so it wasn't even the right thing.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It wasn't. It was just a cricket.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, close enough. Same insect things that jump and make noises.
People say to me, like, what's the food like in America? Like,
there you go.
Oh, well, ostensibly the same. Was it that ham is produced a little more sausage-like in the way that it's made in America than what I'm used to, but fundamentally it's pretty much the same stuff, right? No longer can I say that.
Yeah.
This has been a really gross experience, and we are going to talk about Joel, but you just have to be aware, listener, that we've had a really horrible experience in this room just a few moments ago.
We're a little off, I think.
Blow a trumpet in Zion. Sound an alarm on my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord is coming. It is near, a day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and thick darkness. Like blackness, there is spread upon the mountains a great and powerful people. Their like has never been before, nor will be again after them, though the years of all the generations. I'm gagging. Fire devours before them, and behind them a flame burns. The land is like the Garden of Eden before them, but behind them a desolate wilderness, and nothing escapes them. Their appearance is like the appearance of horses, and like war horses they run. And with the rumbling of chariots they leap on the tops of the mountains, like the crackling of a flame of fire devouring the stubble, like a powerful army drawn up for battle. Before them, peoples are in anguish, all faces grow pale. I know what you feel, mate. Like warriors, they charge. Like soldiers, they scale the wall. They march each in his own way. They do not swerve from their paths. They do not jostle one another. Each marches in his path. They burst through the weapons and are not halted. They leap upon the city. They run upon the walls. They climb up into the houses. They enter through the windows like a thief. This is the word of the Lord.
Oh, thanks be to God. That might be the only passage that quite makes sense of what I'm experiencing right now.
I'm going to have another bit of seltzer.
Yeah, I'm wanting, again. Oh, well.
So I think the epic imagery here. So back up a bit. Joel does this intriguing thing where I think sometimes you have a sense that a thing is like a thing, and sometimes a thing is a thing. So
wait, sometimes it's a metaphor,
right,
and sometimes it's
real.
literal.
Yeah. So I think last week when he was talking about fire, scholars debate a little bit: was there a fire, or was it just really hot, or neither? Was the devastation of the locusts like the devastation you get from a fire, but there hadn't been one? And I took the view that there probably had been a fire, but if not, it was really hot and the sun is fiery. I didn't think it was a metaphor. I think now, this week, as he starts talking about powerful invading armies and horses and things, I think this might well be a metaphor.
I think,
that actually it's like the locusts are like an enormous army, that intent is being ascribed to these things now.
Mm-hmm.
That they're on a mission to do a thing, which is damage. And that's growing through this lament. The idea that this isn't just happenstance or bad chance or whatever, but there's actually some intentionality behind this invading force of locusts.
It's a pretty countercultural idea, at least in our culture.
God did it.
Yeah. I remember there was several years ago when a hurricane came and caused all kinds of trouble in Haiti. And Pat Robertson, he's like the 700 Club guy or something, but he made this thing, he essentially said publicly that he believed that it was God's judgment on Haiti, which is an incredibly self-righteous thing to say.
When there was no judgment on your house?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And who are you, Pat Robertson, to say that? And everyone was infuriated. Mm-hmm. I'm totally with him on that. Like, you can't just look at some other country and be like, that's God's judgment on you. But there was another step that everyone took, and that was that everyone said, therefore, natural disasters are just that. They're not God's judgment. There's no meaning behind them. Mm-hmm. There's no higher purpose. It's merely blind fate or blind chance. It's just the way that things are. God has nothing to do with it. I don't follow there because the Bible doesn't allow us to follow there.
Well, yes, because what you're effectively saying is I'm placing a limit on God. He could not possibly use a natural disaster for his purposes. Yeah. And I think that's saying too much the other way, isn't it?
It's like Jesus says, the Tower of Siloam, right?
That fell.
That fell. He's like, you think that they were worse than anybody else? And he says, no, I tell you, but unless you repent, you will all likewise perish. So Jesus is essentially saying, that was a little glimpse of judgment here and now. Yes, I'm not denying that, but it's not for you to point fingers. Yeah,
and it could be reminiscent of judgment and not actually be judgment. There's a sort of third middle option, right? That a bad thing could happen to you, and in a fallen world, it just happens. But nonetheless, bad thing happening to you can be a sobering event that's redeemable by God, even if really, actually, intentionally, he never, quote unquote, caused it in the first place.
Yeah.
So you have all sorts of options. It's very difficult to pass out without a prophetic word.
I mean, that's a really sticky wicket to say, like, well, did God cause this? What's God's will for the world? Mm-hmm. I mean, then we're getting into like his,
double predestination.
Does God will every leaf that falls at every way, or does he direct the course of events in some kind of like more detached
movie
way? And if it is that level of sovereignty, then how do we think about events and stuff? It's something I can't say that like I have like a complete easy answer, then I have everything worked out in some sort of neat system.
I don't think we can ultimately pass out ever the tension between divine sovereignty and human responsibility.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can ever fully pass that out. What we do see is that as a sovereign, God can do anything he likes, good or bad.
Yeah.
Being good, he will redeem bad things.
Yes.
He can do evil for good, but also sometimes in a fallen world, bad things happen because sin has entered the world, and the consequences of sin are not always direct or proportional or fair. So a great example, or a horrible example, would be a little child playing innocently on their driveway. They run out into the street and a drunk driver comes along and runs them over. And you say, like, okay, well, was that girl innocent? Was she perfect? Was she sinless? No, she wasn't. She was a human. But was this thing that happened something that was the direct result of her sinfulness? No, it wasn't. It was actually the result of the drunk driver's sinfulness.
Yeah.
And so sin is not fair. It's not predictable. It's not proportionate.
It's absurd.
It is absurd, and what goes around doesn't necessarily come around. You have, it's not karma. You have evil people prospering and good people suffering.
But someday God will reckon and set all those imbalances right.
Right.
And that's what judgment essentially says, that God, it's not just right now. What we see happening around us in the world isn't fair or just or even good, but God is going to take all of that and make it into something good.
So here, I guess the crisis that they're experiencing right now, which in some way is actually from God, this one is. We know it is because God says it is. And I think that's important. We don't need to opine.
Yeah.
We're told. So this one is sent from him as a pre-echo or preparatory event to the end of the world. It's not the end of the world, but it's like it. It feels like it looks like it, and the response in it for them is the same as the response for us would be in the end of the world for real if it happens today. And so this passage, if you've got ESV open in front of you, the editors have given it the subheading, The Day of the Lord, and that is Judgment Day.
So the response is panic, or take it seriously.
Blow a trumpet in Zion. And sound an alarm, and I think now you've got this idea that we're going to get together. So there's an intriguing thing. So we're still at an early stage of the lament. We're not yet into the stuff that you're going to deal with next week and solemn fasts and all that kind of more ceremonial and cultic kind of worship around the temple site as such. We're still in the moaning about what's going on stage. Yeah. But the alarm is ringing. And the effect of this crisis is to draw people in.
Oh, yeah.
We've got the attention. So there's an alarm going. The kind of alarm you would ring when an enemy invaded.
Yeah. Because it clearly is seen as an enemy, as an invading army.
Yeah. Fire devours before them. Behind them a flame burns. Now this is interesting. The land is like the Garden of Eden. And there's that stuff I went on and on and on about.
Insert musical score, the Eden theme right there.
It's Luke and Leia's theme, probably.
Oh, is it?
Probably.
Yeah. I think it probably is.
So the land is like the Garden of Eden, because we were told straight up. So the promised land, the inviolable promised land that was given to them by God as a promise to Abraham, and then reasserted as a promise to Moses, that where they live right now, in proximity to God, with plenty and abundance, Eden is now desolate, like a wilderness. Cue the wilderness theme.
Oh, cue Egypt.
Egypt tune.
We need to get. You know how we have the little buttons on our podcast recorder.
Lost Egypt tune.
Yeah, we need to have tunes that come in.
So Egypt's tune is playing in Eden. Expressly, it says so. Nothing escapes them. Their appearance is like the appearance of horses, so it's like them. I think that's important. This is just an epic simile. Mm-hmm. Is that right? Is that what they call it?
Simile.
So, like war horses, they run, and it's a powerful army, and people are in anguish, just in the same way that you would be when the place was invaded.
Yeah.
Square brackets. Pause the story. So here we have a pre-echo of the end time, the destruction of the world and the forming of a new world.
Wait, how were you getting that?
The ESV title, but also last week. And it's Day of the Lord. which we were told last week. It's kind of there that this feels like the end of the world. We do know in AD 70, after Jesus, Jerusalem was actually invaded by an actual army and actually wrecked.
Yeah, it was.
And that frequently in the New Testament, when end time passages are read, scholars have debated, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about the AD 70 invasion of Jerusalem, or are we talking about something more epic, an epic simile? And they probably felt in AD 70 as though it was the end of the world. And this passage would have been really helpful to them. A passage about Jerusalem being invaded by an army would have been really helpful when Jerusalem was being invaded by an army.
I've heard it explained this way before. It's like, okay, when you're driving out toward the Rocky Mountains, from Colorado, there comes a point, it's plain, Kansas, Kansas, and then all of a sudden, boom, you see this wall of mountains, and it's like, oh, okay, there's just a plain, and then the mountains start, and so it seems like that's the way it is, but as you get closer, you discover actually that the mountains are staggered. That there's like a mountain, and then there's like several miles, and then there's another few mountains, and then maybe there will be like a 100-mile plain before the other mountains start. So it's like looking out toward the end of the world. We see, and the Jews saw all these things: calamity, resurrection,
right?
But you see, there's actually things that come first. Like they didn't see that Jesus would be resurrected before everybody else was resurrected. So,
no, they couldn't see it all. But this looks like the end.
Yeah,
and it looks like other bits that also look like the end.
And I think effectively for us, no matter whether it's going to come in staggered in stages or whether it's like all at once, the response is the same, right?
Yeah.
Get ready.
Yes, the response is the same. Whether it is the end of the world or it's like the end of the world, the response is the same. And whether, even if it doesn't feel like the end of the world, the response is the same, because it will end. Mm-hmm. So, in fact, actually, you get some really common biblical imagery in verse 10, that whenever there's a sort of end of the world type passage in Scripture, and they appear in several parts of Scripture, not just Revelation, but you also, I think Luke has one, Matthew has one, I think maybe Thessalonians has one. I think there's a couple of bits. Yeah. The earth quakes before them and the heavens tremble. The sun and the moon are darkened and the stars withdraw their shining. This gets said a lot. And I don't know if it's just the case that there are so many locusts flying around you can't see the sky, or whether it is just a classic epic image of the end, or a bit of both. But I think the idea is that the noise and the thrumming sound of the wings and the feet is overwhelming, like a quake. And the sun and the moon being darkened is sort of because basically the sky's full of these critters. So it feels like an end time thing, and end time imagery is being used of this event. Some creative thought emerges from this, and that is God is behind it. The Lord, verse 11, utters his voice before his army. These are God's locusts. For his camp is exceedingly great. He who executes his word is powerful. Given that these bugs are powerful, the one who controls them must be even more powerful still. Yeah. For the day of the Lord, the end time, judgment day, the end of all things, is great and very awesome. Who can endure it? Rhetorical question.
So this seems like apocalyptic language.
Defo, yeah.
And just to kind of clarify what that is, when God's people are increasingly in a place of powerlessness and they're increasingly vulnerable, you see a lot of apocalyptic language coming up because they're at the end of themselves. Their ability to like rescue themselves or fix anything is no longer there. Like you can't keep a bunch of locusts from coming and gobbling up everything. They're just, you can't. And you get a lot of imagery of the earth quaking and the sun and the moon being darkened and the stars withdrawing their shining, all this kind of stuff through apocalyptic imagery. Yeah. And I think it's reinforced that the only thing that can deliver us from at this point is something utterly supernatural.
Yes.
And
something outside.
And it's always pointing to that there's apocalyptic literature is always pointing to God's intervention as the only hope.
And we placed our faith in the wrong things. So if you placed your faith in the sun, its warming rays, its light, its gravitational pull, and the effects that it has on our ability to live, then you placed your faith in the wrong things. Likewise, the earth, if you placed your faith in the solidity of the ground beneath your feet, if there's an earthquake, then it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so our faith in material things is being shaken, literally shaken here.
Yeah.
And, you can scale it right down from the sun to the earth to your own home or bank account. And what I think is kind of interesting in this passage is that we've called the sermon "The Crisis Comes Home," because there's this little bit where the bugs are no longer causing trouble in the fields or causing trouble in the temple or trouble in the granaries or trouble in any kind of public item, but they're actually causing trouble in your own house.
Verse 9, they leap upon the city, they run upon the walls, they climb up into the houses, they enter through the windows like a thief.
Right, and there you have, square brackets, by the way, Jesus in end times talk says he'll come like a thief in the night at the end of the world as well. So there's definite end of the world kind of stuff going on here.
Yeah.
That end of the world tune is playing through this passage, for want of a better phrase. But what intrigues me pastorally is this idea that the crisis comes home. So you can be in a national or international crisis as a citizen, and yet also in terms of your own life, family life, essentially shielded from it by, for example, wealth. So, there's a terrible power outage, but I have a backup generator, so I'm okay. There's a terrible, drought, but I've got a well. And so I'm okay.
Yeah.
And you can go on like this.
There's
right.
incredible atrocities, but I live in America.
Right. So my land is at least quiet. Or, okay, there are storms and things in America, but I live in an affluent part where the response will be good.
Yeah.
Hurricane Katrina came through and New Orleans was actually wrecked for years. It was just essentially ignored. And I think you've got this sense that eventually, for all of us, the crisis will come home.
Yeah.
We can be shielded from crisis by sophistication, good contacts, wealth, all manner of things. But eventually, for every single one of us, the crisis comes home. Even if it's just a natural death in a ripe old age, it's coming.
Yeah, no amount of money can get anyone to escape death. Death comes for everyone. It doesn't discriminate.
But this is the moment, this is the turning point. When the crisis comes home, that's when a person may reach out to God.
We've seen that happen over and over and over again.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like Joel, like Joel's, like we see happening here. The crisis finally hits home and Israel finally turns.
Right. Because what was their faith in before?
Yeah.
I mean, their faith might have been in something quite good. Maybe their faith was in Eden. Their faith was in the promised land. Look, God made us a promise, this inviolable promised land, a land flowing with milk and honey. It's going to be really great. He told Abraham it would be good. He told Moses it would be good. And it is good. So, we're okay. And at this point, there's a taking for granted your heritage. We could do this with our faith. I'm a Christian. I was brought up a Christian. My parents are Christians. So I'm okay.
Yeah.
But it's actually when the crisis gets personal that faith gets personal.
Yes. I think that's really true.
Yeah. So they run in, they climb up into the houses, and I think this is like they're in my bed now. They enter in through the windows. They're in my closet. They're in my food jars in the kitchen. They're everywhere. And they can't be stopped.
So, I think we invite people to do testimonies on this podcast all the time.
Yeah.
And I think maybe it's helpful. It might be helpful for me to share. This actually hits me pretty there's a story in my own life, I think that the Lord's been working that I think might be helpful to share, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So about a year and a half ago, my dad was diagnosed with high blood pressure, and I like freaked out because I was like, I cannot lose you, and really spent. So I got this book. I got all these books about like health food, how to avoid heart disease, all this stuff like that. Lost a bunch of weight. Started eating super healthy, and all that's good, right? It's like really good to eat healthy. I still try to eat healthy. It's good.
Square brackets, apart from the odd cricket.
Yeah, but as many people know, my dad died just suddenly, unexpectedly, back in August, and it's really made me think about not about eating healthy, but just about the fact that, in a sense, when your ticket's up, and where's my real security? Is it in my physical health? Can we run from death by excessive care of our health and tending to everything and being in perfect shape and everything like that? No, you can't. I mean, my dad ran 12 miles the day before he died. So, there's only that it's good to be healthy, but it can become an idol. And ultimately, when the crisis hits home, that becomes a moment where you have to evaluate all of the things upon which you've been building your life and look at them. And for me, I looked at that and I realized that, man, my we're all hurtling toward death. And what hope is there in the face of death? There's only one hope in the face of death. That's and Christ. That's it. Like there's nothing else. Right. And so we can fool ourselves so much into thinking that our money or our set of relationships or our health or whatever else it is insulating us. But what the Lord wants us to do is actually just to turn to Him and to trust Him in the face of everything instead. So that's kind of one of the things that I've really felt that the Lord's teaching me in this season of my life, among a lot of different things. But I think it relates to the book of Joel because Israel turns back.
And to hear you processing that out loud as an unconcluded thought is really helpful in this season. You're actually modeling the thing that we're hoping to do.
Yeah.
And it also feels as though you can say things that I can't say. Like, I would never say to you, well, his ticket was up. I wouldn't dream of saying that to you. I wouldn't even think it.
Oh, yeah.
But you can say it.
Yeah, I guess I can say it.
Because of the grief you're in. Yeah. And I think that's what's so important about lament, is that you can say stuff.
And that gives us an insight into Jesus too, right? He's our high priest and has been there. He's walked the depths of our experience. And so he actually understands us. He actually can say it.
Yeah.
Too. And that's
he can say it.
If I can say it after, the things I'm going through right now, how much more?
How much more can he do?
Anyways, I don't want to take us too off track, but
no, that's not off track. I think that's the essence of the track. I think that's exactly right. That the crisis came home for you a few weeks ago in the most horrific sense.
Yeah.
And it came suddenly. And hearing about your dad's faith, meeting him a few times, seeing it in practice was wonderful, because I know that he was prepared for something that you don't see coming.
Yeah, he was ready.
He was ready, and he'd been ready for a long time. And that's a wonderful thing.
There's nothing that could have been more comfort to my family than that.
Yeah.
No amount of life insurance, no amount of good friends and consolation makes any difference in the face of that. than knowing that someone you love not only claimed to be a Christian, but fundamentally walked with the Lord, knew the Lord, lived a lifestyle of repentance before the Lord. Like, you can't replace that. You can't fake that. Nothing else is going to cut it.
No.
Yeah. So
the effect of the crisis is to drive you towards a question, which is, what's the point of all of this? Where is God in this? What is the meaning of life? Is there anything more? That's what a crisis does. The question always needed to be asked in the first place, long before the crisis. But the crisis often drives it to the surface, and therein, I think, means that we're really close to the turning point in the letter now. And next week you'll be preaching on that. But at this point, we're still at the getting our heads around the fact that a really bad thing is happening to us stage.
Yeah.
Of shock and grief. And here there's some very sophisticated thinking. This feels like the end of the world. Why has Egypt shown up in Eden? This feels like the end of the world. It's a clashing of film score themes all rattling around together. And I would suggest that the thing that precipitated that conclusion was the crisis coming home. Until then, we could just let this play out in the fields and in the temple and over there, and I'm still okay. And suddenly they are not okay. And it's like the minute they're not okay and they say it, then we're into the turning point, and that comes next week.
Look forward to that.
Thanks for sharing that really intimate story. Thank you also for sharing a quite thoroughly revolting experience earlier this morning.
Eating a cricket.
Yeah. It's strange how two things like that can happen at the same time.
Yep.
But I do like doing ministry with you, Ben.
They're still, likewise, it's still stuck in my throat. Not ministry, but the cricket.
The things we do for the Lord.
Yeah.
I think it was completely unnecessary, but filling up what is lacking. All right. This has been a podcast of Christ Church Rock Shuffle. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you all very soon. God bless.